Hello guys and welcome to a new tutorial. This week we're gonna be recreating the Fan of Knives ability used by Warden in the game Warcraft 3, the one that kinda just spawns a bunch of knives, right? So after you are done following this tutorial, you can alter the visuals of your ability to better fit your game. All these project files will be available for you to download in my Patreon, so that is scripts, scenes, prefabs, and this knife model. Without any further ado, let's jump right in. As you can see here, I have set up my scene with a directional light, a plane that uses a checker material, and lastly a very basic player controller. Let's hit play so you can see there's nothing special about this scene and you can replicate it quite easily, or you can just use your own scene. Okay, we will start by creating two empty game objects. One will be called Fan of Knives and the other Knife Prefab. Now drag them both into your folder so that you can create a prefab and then delete them from your scene, since we do not really need them anymore. Open up your knife prefab and I'm going to quickly create a shape of a knife with some primitive shapes. You can take as long as you want here to create your knife. Mine will look kinda dull and boring, since most of my tutorials do not really focus on visuals that much, but rather technicality. After you're done with that, make sure your primitives or the 3D model that you added to your prefab does not have a collider on them, and then add a collider to your parent prefab game object and edit it to fit the shape of your knife. Awesome. Add a new C# script and name it knife behavior. Then open up your Fan of Knives and add a new C# script called Fan of Knives. Cool. Now open up your Fan of Knives script using your coding software of choice and let's begin coding. First, we will set up our variables. We will need the knife prefab we created earlier, and this will not be a type of game object but rather transform. An integer called knives amount, and for the sake of keeping things nice and neat, on the inspector window, I will give it a range of 1 to 100. Two floats, spawn radius, and self-destroy timer. Both of them are pretty self-explanatory. Lastly, we will need a list of transforms called knives. Awesome. Next, we add a new function called spawn knives and call it under our start. Inside update, we will lower our self-destroy timer variable over time and then destroy this game object if said variable reaches 0. Down here in our spawn knives function, we check if the float knives amount is bigger than the knives list of transforms. We do a loop to instantiate a knife prefab, then set its parent to this game object so that we do not crowd the project with lots of game objects, and also add it to the list. Next, we have to assign their spawn positions as well as rotations so that they spawn around this game object facing at it or away from it. So we need a quaternion to calculate a 360-degree angle on the x-axis, then get the spawn radius using this transform's forward vector. Down here we do a loop to assign the position, make it face this transform, and then calculate the next knife's position and rotation. Awesome. We are done with the Fan of Knives script. Onto the knife script now. This script will control the movement of our knives. We will need a few float variables. They are all pretty self-explanatory, by the exception of maybe these two. I will show you later what they do. We will also need a float to hold the gravity of our knife and a vector 3 that will be the direction we will travel. Under start, we assign the average speed to be the average speed multiplied by a range number between these two variables. This will give each knife a random movement speed. Under update, we need to add gravity over time and then set on what direction we will be moving. Since this game object is being spawned facing the Fan of Knives transform, we will make it go backwards. Add the gravity to our direction variable and then we move our game object using all this. I also add a little tilt to the knives so that they look like they are actually falling down. You can change the direction of the tilt by modifying this. Now for collision detection, we use onTrigger enter. And over here, I cannot really tell you how to damage enemies because I do not know your scripts, but you will do something like this. Here you put your enemy script. Since in this project I do not have one, I will simply use a rigid body. We check if we have found an enemy, and then here you will damage him, or destroy this game object, or the enemy game object, I don't know. Do what works best for your game. Lastly, in my controller script, I'm going to add a line up here to assign the fan of knives prefab, and then down in update I will check if we press space, we instantiate our fan of knives prefab. That's it, we are done coding. Let's go back to Unity now. Okay, we have to set our variables in the inspector, so select your knife prefab, and for this demo I will use these values. Of course you can play with them as much as you want, this is just what works best for me. For our fan of knives prefab, we have to assign the knife prefab transform here to be our knife prefab. Duh, right? Then for amount, I will do just 10 for now. For spawn radius, I will quickly check the radius of this sphere. Okay, so 1 for my spawn radius, and for self-destroy timer, I will do like maybe after 3 seconds. Lastly, I need to assign the fan of knives prefab to my controller so that I can spawn it whenever I press space. And yep, awesome. Let's hit play and test it out. It's all working as intended. You can see they all move at the same speed though. Let's add some randomness to it by changing these values. Now you can see some of them go faster, others slower than the average speed. Let's increase the knives amount to 50. Looks cool, right? To show you how weird it looks without any movement speed randomness, let's set it back to 1. And yep, see that? I mean, I personally do not like it. If you increase the tilt, you can see it point downwards faster, but okay, that is it. Now that you're done following this tutorial, go customize it to look however you want. This is some of the examples I have available for my patrons. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.